Welcome to Create a Plan for Success by Walking Back in Time. I'm Lindley Craig, NLP trainer, and I will be your guide through this NLP training session. And let's get started. So what we're going to do is overall look at, number one, why we're looking at or learning about walking back in time and how can we use this process, this NLP technique, in our daily lives. Then we're going to learn exactly what is time. And that sounds kind of strange because you kind of know what time is already. But I'm going to give it to you in a more NLP kind of perspective. I'm also going to tell you some certain things about time that you might not have thought of that might be a little bit helpful for you. And then we're going to learn how to do this particular technique about walking back in time and being able to create a plan for success. Then lastly, of course, I'm going to ask you, what did you notice? So one of those things that we do in NLP is just understand what we noticed so that we can create an even more in-depth learning experience for ourselves. So let's get started by looking at something that came into my inbox. So I was quite amazed when I was preparing for this particular video session that something sort of came into my inbox sent from, I guess, the universe. And it really explains as to why it's so important to understand this concept of how we walk back in time. Let's take a look. I couldn't say it any better myself. So thanks to Darren Hardy. And if you're interested in getting the Darren Daily, please go ahead and go to that website as you see on your screen. And you too can get some motivational inspiration in your inbox Monday through Friday. All right. So a little plug for Darren Hardy, but then again, he does a lot for me. So it's worth it. All right. So now you have an understanding of why we want to do this is because super achievers do this. This is how we stop ourselves from getting overwhelmed in our plans for success. Sometimes there's too many things that we are trying to think of, and sometimes we're so overwhelmed we can't even think of a strategy of how to get to where we want to go. So this is why we use this, as Darren Hardy calls it, re-engineering, and what we call in NLP, walking back in time. And first, for us to understand it a little bit more, I want to give you some background on what time is from an NLP perspective. For us in NLP, time is considered to be a timeline. So we all have an understanding of time as a direction. So for example, past is a certain direction for us, and future is a certain direction for us. And even now, or being present, is actually a direction for us. You see, you can see these kinds of things in people as they describe their life. They might be sitting there saying something to you about something they're going to do in the future, and they'll be gesturing in the direction that their future is. Or they might be telling you about something that happened to them in the past and gesturing to where that place is in the past for them. So we all have a concept of this timeline. It's innate in all of us. We're past, we're present, and where our future is. So if you trust me, I'd like you to go ahead and guide you through understanding where your specific timeline is. So if you go ahead and close your eyes now and imagine a future time, something that you'll be doing maybe tomorrow or next week or next month. It might be a holiday or something that you're looking forward to. And where is that for you? I mean, if you had to actually point to the future and those future things, where would you point in space? Where would you point around you? And then think of something in the past, something that occurred maybe yesterday or a week before, maybe something even years before. And where does that memory come from? If you had to point to it, where would you point to in the past? So these are the things and elements of our timeline. And you can go ahead and open your eyes now because we have an understanding of past, present, and future on our timeline. And some of you might have had your future in front of you and your past behind you. So this is my particular way of having my timeline. So when I gesture to the future, for me, it's always forward. And the past, for me, is always behind me. And I say it in my language as well. I'm looking forward to something, or put that in the past. So those are the kinds of things that we say and gesture in ways we gesture to indicate where the direction of our timeline is. Now, for some of you, you might have had your future to the right or to the left and your past to the right or to the left, and they're in opposite directions. That's also a possibility of where you can have your timeline. Another possibility is that you might be angled out in different directions. So you might have a future over here and a past over here, and they might be angled out. None of these type of timelines is anything that's a problem for us. It's just the choice of our own experiences through life and our own innate ability to understand time. So nothing good or bad about any of the way our timelines are set up. Now, as you can probably see, I've left one little thing out of our timeline, which is now, or the present moment. And this is actually a very crucial thing. So where is your now? If you had to think about where now is, if you had to feel where it came from, where would you point to now? So for some people, their now is actually inside them. So they might have their future in the forward and their past behind them, and now is actually inside of them. And we call these people in NLP in-time people. So they have a specific characteristic about them, but we'll get to that later in NLP practitioner course, because we go all through the characteristics of what in-time people are in the certification course. Now, you might also have now outside of you, which means that you have a past in one direction or the other, and your now is actually outside of you. So when you point to it, it's most likely you pointed pretty much near in front of you or just a little bit in front of you, but it was definitely outside of your body. So these are what we call through time people. And through time people also have very specific kinds of characteristics that go along with them. They have a tendency to look at time as it's outside of them. So they're more like a judger of time. So if you've ever done an MBTI, Myers-Briggs Temperament Indicator, you will understand when I say the judger of time or a perceiver of time, a P or a J. So these people, as you see on your screen now, is a J of time, a judger of time. They look at time. And a perceiver is the one with the now inside of them, who perceives time. They're in time. All right. So let's look at another situation where you could have your timeline on an angle, and your now could also be outside of you or inside of you. Another thing to note from an NLP perspective is that we don't really do anything to change someone's timeline unless they have a little bit of an issue like you see on your screen now. So this issue is the fact that a person's past is before their now as well as before their future. So they're actually looking at their past and it's getting in the way of their now and the future. And in the NLP practitioner certification course, we talk about how to move somebody's timeline and how that can help benefit them to stop looking at their past and allowing it to get in the way of their future, or just to be allowing it to get in the way of their current moment. Normally, though, in NLP, we don't rearrange somebody's timeline. So your timeline is whatever it is. And it's really cool and fun to play with your timeline like we're going to do in this video session. Now, the concept of time is getting a little bit screwed up nowadays with this entire idea of mindfulness. People who are asking you to be in the present, to be in now. Now, can you imagine who those people are now that you know a little bit about NLP and the timeline? So people who want you to be in now are people who naturally are in now. So they're asking people who judge time normally to instead perceive time. Now, from an NLP perspective, we don't actually believe that people should just change because the other group thinks they're better. What we do believe, though, is that having flexibility between judging time and perceiving time is actually quite good. So one of the things that you would want to do is when you're in experiences that are really joyful, that are really fantastic and nurturing for you, then you want to be in time. You want to be in that moment and being able to perceive all of the things through your five senses in that moment and really grasp everything that happens for you and be there and be present. So the mindfulness thing really works. Though at times, though, sometimes we need to step outside of now and be able to judge time in a better way. So when we're analyzing things, when we're goal setting, when we're trying to create plans and strategies for our future, especially when those plans and strategies haven't worked for us in the past, well, this is the time when we need to be more judgmental of time. We need to look at time better. Also, if we have problems with being late and we constantly are late or showing up late for events, and we're kind of ticking people off or making people mad, that we're not being judgmental of time. We're not judging time correctly. We're too much in the now. Those are times that it's also helpful for us to judge time and be through time rather than to be in time. So I completely understand the mindfulness movement and how it wants you to be in time. There are times to be in time, and there are times to judge time. All right, so let's look at one other concept with time. And this concept is all about the fact that time is actually a wave. In fact, it doesn't stop. So when you think about time in the future, it's a direction because it keeps moving. And you think about the time as past, it's behind you or to the right or to the left of you, but it's in a direction and it's there. It keeps moving. And so the idea is that when somebody sits there and tells you to be in the now, it's really hard to be in something that is constantly moving. So it's like, are you in now? Well, no, you can't be, because now is now in the past. And we can't be in now what's coming up in the now, because that would be in the future. So technically, there isn't really a space for now. You can't pinpoint it on a timeline that says this is now. It's constantly moving. You have to understand that particular concept. So in the mindfulness movement, we just need to also understand that being present and being in the now is a constantly changing thing. It's moving all the time. So it's not just a particular point. Hope you get that. I hope you understand that. All right. To reiterate my point about time and how the mindfulness movement might have it just a little bit wrong, I would like to read you a passage from this book, which is called You Are a Badass. Now, the author is really fantastic. There's nothing wrong with the book, but she has a place in the book where she talks about being present as a pigeon. And I want to utilize it to emphasize how the mindfulness movement might have you a little bit off track and what really it's all about. So I do apologize because there are some words in this book that are inappropriate for small children, let's just say. All right, I'll just read you this passage and it'll demonstrate what I mean by this mindfulness movement kind of upsetting the entire timeline. So she says, I was in class one day and the instructor told us to get into the pigeon pose, which is the pose where you stretch one leg out behind you, fold the other one out sideways in front of you, and then bend forward and lie down on top of the whole thing. It's fine if you're a pigeon, but it's one of the poses I dread most because my hips don't move that way. It hurts, and I'm scared I'm going to get stuck. But even though my body requested otherwise, I'm in class and I'm going for it. And I'm determined to relax into it, even though I'm really just silently begging the dude to tell us to change into a different pose, which he doesn't do because he's too busy talking. He's blabbing on and on and on about our connection to the universe and our breath and the path of enlightenment and holy fucking shit, dude, you'll hurry up. I think I'm going to rip something. I really do. Oh my God, I think I'm actually stuck. How am I ever going to get out of this pose? He's going to have to come over here and lift me out because I'm truly stuck. And then whoosh. I breathe into it. I shut off the relentless yammering in my brain, get quiet, and surrender. I feel my body shift and go deeper into the pose than it's ever gone before. But then I realize that I really do think I'm stuck. And seriously, what the hell, dude? What are you trying to talk about all night? We've been in this freaking pose for 5 minutes for real. And by the way, my knee just got all hot and you're not going to shut up, even though I keep thinking you're finally done. But then you're going to keep going and whoosh. I reconnect. I'm back in the zone. I melt deeply into the pose and feel such bliss and true connection to something much larger than myself. this flip-flopping between freaking out in our heads and breathing into the now is basically how most of us go through life. Now, what was interesting about it for me was when she's sitting there talking about how she is uncomfortable in a pose and her knee is actually on fire and things like that, those are times when she's actually in the now. Even though she says that she's not really in the now because she's not in the Zen-like zone, right? So the mindfulness movement wants you to believe that the only way that you can be in the now is when you're in this Zen-like zone. And it's not the case. Being in the now is whatever is in the present moment, good or bad. So if you're talking to yourself in the present moment, that is what's happening in the present moment. It's just that. So now I do agree that when we're sitting here trying to anticipate when the yoga instructor is going to move the pose, then that is looking into the future. And our fears about getting stuck is also something that is future based. So when we get into thoughts and things like that, we are not in the present moment, and totally understand that. So it's just the idea that if you're in the present, it has to be good. Sorry, folks, but it's not necessarily the case. All right, so that was my little mini attack on mindfulness and how they've kind of upset the entire time revolution sort of thing. But anyway, so just so you know that time's a wave. There really isn't anything such as now. You can't pinpoint it. And you have a direction of past, present, and future. So that's it for what you need to know about now to go forward with our next part of our video session. Now, I've gone ahead and recorded the session, the exercise that you're going to be walking back in time. I've already gone ahead and recorded that for you so that you can do the exercise after this video session is over. So the important things to know about this particular exercise is that you'll need some type of goal that's in the future that you need a plan for. And what I'm specifically talking about is a plan like a project where there is many steps to get to where you need to go. Or perhaps maybe it's a habit type goal where you're trying to lose weight or go to the gym or wherever. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to become something different in the future. And we're going to walk how the plan is to achieve that. And we're going to walk it back in time. So you'll also, of course, have to understand where your future is and your timeline so that you can conceptually walk through this. Now, I highly recommend actually walking it. So get a big space. Doesn't have to be huge, but get a space that you can actually walk forward onto your timeline to the point in time where you've achieved your goal, and then allow yourself to walk back the steps. Now, another thing that is quite helpful to have is a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen. So I have the people that I guide in this exercise, I have them have a notebook so they can write down the things that they come up with. Another way for you to do it is you can also just audio record yourself making the statements that you want to have for your plan. So all sorts of insights will come up from your unconscious mind about this plan. And so it's good to capture them somewhere. So either writing them down or auditorily recording them in some sort of way. This is perfect for you. All right, so those are some of the things that are going to help you to be really successful in doing this exercise. So just to give you an idea of the overview of what it's going to be like, what I will do is guide you to a specific time on the future of your timeline where you have already achieved the goal. And I'm going to ask you some questions about what it looks like, sounds like, and feels like. And then I'm going to ask you questions about what did you do just before that particular time on your goal by walking back in time and figuring out if you're back maybe a week, maybe a month, what happened, what was the milestone that you achieved just before you finished or achieved your goal completely. So then by keep stepping back in time and keep discovering what we were doing, what it sounded like, what it felt like during each of the stages, then we have a very complete picture of all of the stages that we need to go through, all the milestones that we need to accomplish before we get to the end of our goal. That makes sense, right? So in the last one, we will also just have one particular section that you're going to concentrate on the next 3 steps that you need to do from the present moment. And this is going to help guide you to get started straight away on achieving those things that you need to create that success in your life. All right. So it's up to you now to go ahead and do the exercise. And when you're finished, you can come back to the video. And welcome back. Did you do the exercise? Fantastic. So what did you notice? This is the part of the video that's really important for you to reflect on the things that you learned throughout this video. Did you get the understanding of direction and time? Did you get the understanding of, well, there really is no now? Do you want to kind of strangle me about the mindfulness thing? That's fine, no problem. Just what did you notice? It's good to clarify for yourself and to be able to write those down either on your notes or just to maybe journal at the end of the day or review at the end of the day what you learned. So this is the process that we go through to make sure that all of those connections that we've just made kind of stick in our minds. All right, so this is the end of this particular video session, and I hope to see you again in the next.